Hello, everyone. I'm Kikutani. Today I would like to talk about what Buddha teaches about death. I have received a question today. You often have death as a theme on your YouTube channel. I wonder why you talk about such gloomy things. I think people generally believe that it is more important to live one's present moment to the fullest, rather than dwell on such a far-off thought as death. But recently I started feeling that I am being warned that learning about death is important if I want to know what is really essential. The message continues after this. So this is the question I received. I think he has watched a lot of my videos, and I appreciate that. Buddhism talks about death. The questioner writes that I speak on the theme of death, but it is not so much that I speak on the theme of death, but rather that Buddhism speaks on the theme of death. The Buddha thoroughly discussed the issue of death. As he said, people generally believe that you don't have to think about death, and instead of worrying about the far-off future, you just need to live life to the fullest, and that's more important. I think most people would say something like this. But Buddhism is a teaching that takes death seriously. If you talk about happiness without considering death, that view of happiness concerns how we live, but when death is considered seriously, that view of happiness concerns why we live. So there's a big difference there. Buddhism is a teaching that seriously considers death, and on that basis, it teaches us what we were born for, what we live for, and what true happiness is. Conversely, a teaching that does not talk about the issue of death is not Buddhism. You cannot understand the essence of Buddhism without talking about death. So Buddhism is a teaching that examines death. The Buddha taught that taking a serious look at death is the first step to true happiness. So it is natural that he talks about death. So today I would like to talk about what Buddha taught on death. Seeing death as an issue is precisely the reason why the Buddha became an ascetic. Buddha was a child of King Suddhodana, and his name at the time was Prince Siddhartha. He was born as a prince in Kapila Castle. At the age of 29, he secretly escaped from Kapila Castle in the middle of the night and went deep into the mountains to begin ascetic practices. In the morning, everyone realized that the prince was gone, and they searched hard to find him. Before that, Prince Siddhartha had asked King Suddhodana to let him become an ascetic to seek happiness that transcends old age, sickness, and death. King Suddhodana thought he must have gone somewhere to practice, and ordered his retainers to go look for him. So Agyata Kaundinya and the other 4 retainers went in search of Prince Siddhartha, who was practicing asceticism in the mountains. They found him performing practices in a forest. Prince Siddhartha no longer had the strong body he used to have when he was at Kapila Castle, and he was miserably emaciated to the point of being skin and bones. Seeing this, Kaundinya was shocked, and he asked, "Why would you choose such a painful path?" Prince Siddhartha was the child of the king, so he had everything he desired. He had no need to worry about food, clothing, shelter, or anything else. As long as he stayed in the castle, he would not be attacked by enemies, and everyone would protect him, so he would be safe and secure. He had delicious food and danced with 500 beautiful women in the Palace of Four Seasons. It was a safe, secure, fun place full of very pleasant entertainment. So Kondinya asked, "Why have you left Kapila Castle to do ascetic practices on a mountain like this?" Kondinya couldn't believe Prince Siddhartha's decision. Unlike today's forests, it was dangerous. There were tigers and bandits, and there were no doctors even if he got sick. So he was in a place where he was constantly exposed to the threat of death. If he stayed in Kapila Castle, he could enjoy his life because it was fun, safe and secure. Kondinya and the other retainers said that they did not understand why the prince was continuing his dangerous, fearsome, and painful practice. He asked, "Why do you have to leave Kapila Castle, where you can live a happy and bright life? Why do you have to go down such a hard path?" The sutras say that Prince Siddhartha responded as follows. "Why can't you understand? You still don't understand the violent storm of impermanence. Nothing in this world is permanent. All things will one day wither and die. Even the shadow of pleasure contains echoes of impermanence. The music of lovely women only torments men's desires. This world consists of suffering alone. Like a raging fire, like wisps of floating cloud, like a phantom or a bubble, all things are transient. You may love your youth, yet youth is inevitably destroyed by old age, sickness, and death." So he said, "You think you're safe and secure there? You still don't know you are as fleeting as fire, floating clouds, illusions or water bubbles? Even if you are blessed with food, clothes, shelter, and beautiful women, they will only deceive you. Why do you refuse to see the reality that all that enjoyment may be shattered by death at any moment? Our life is just as fleeting as a lamplight that can go out in an instant when the storm of impermanence blows. You're all forgetting this crucial matter, thinking you're safe at the castle, but you could die at any moment even if you are there. You say that I would be happy at the castle instead of a dangerous place like this, but will you stay happy even though being there won't stop you from eventually having to die?" So he asked why they couldn't see this reality. The retainers had wondered why he'd left the castle and said, "You would be happier there. There is everything you need. Why do you keep thinking about death? Why do you have to dwell on such things?" But Prince Siddhartha asked why they didn't understand. Kondinya wanted him to come back, but when he saw that it was impossible to persuade him, he went back to Kapila Castle. After returning to Kapila Castle, the retainers told King Suddhodana that the prince's conviction was strong as steel and so they were unable to persuade him to come back. However, as a parent, the king was worried about him, so he asked them to go back to him again, join him in his practice, and take care of him while doing so. So Kondinya and the others joined Prince Siddhartha in his practices in the forest. When Prince Siddhartha attained enlightenment at the age of 35, 5 of them, including Kondinya, were so moved by the Buddha's virtue that they became his disciples. Death is the fundamental theme of not only Buddhism, but of philosophy too. Michel de Montaigne said that philosophy is the study of death. By the way, when Japanese celebrity Takeshi Kitano was 47 years old or so, he had a serious motorcycle accident that left his face badly damaged. On his sickbed, he wrote his thoughts. In the book Takeshi's Way of Living to Die, he says the same thing as Montaigne. It is not too overdramatic to say that the only thing I was thinking about on my sickbed was really the issue of life and death. Death is a violence that comes suddenly. Thinking about death, preparing the mind for death, is an unusually heavy subject, even though it is only the flip side of being alive. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is the ultimate goal of philosophy. The significance of death has nothing to do with what you did or didn't do in the past. Not a single detail of your life matters. It doesn't matter whether you did good things in this life. Death suddenly comes no matter what. I wonder how people will respond to that. This will be my theme for the future. This is what he said in his book. He was surprised and shocked by the very idea of death. He said that preparation for death will be his theme for the future. Afterwards, he also said, "I fell into a coma after that accident. Ever since then, I've felt as if I am just dreaming." After the accident, he made a lot of TV programs that earned him a lot of viewer ratings, and he also became an internationally acclaimed film director. But he felt as if all the spectacular achievements of his life, and the rest of his life itself, were just a dream. This shows how much this issue of death impacted his life. Aristotle said that philosophy begins when we are struck with wonder. What is the greatest wonder in life? Well, like Takeshi Kitano said, there is no greater surprise than to realize that we are mortal beings. We take it for granted that we're alive. But at some point in our lives, we're painfully reminded that we are, in fact, mortal. Many of us will be thrust into reality in our later years when we are diagnosed with something like cancer. Tolstoy was shocked by it in his late 30s. Lev Tolstoy, the great Russian writer, is known for works like War and Peace. In his late 30s, he was startled to realize that he was going to die, and wrote the following. "I simply felt astonished that I had failed to realize this from the beginning. It had all been common knowledge for such a long time. Today or tomorrow sickness and death will come, and they had already arrived, to those dear to me, and to myself, and nothing will remain other than the stench and the worms. How can a person carry on living and fail to perceive this? That is what is so astonishing. It is only possible to go on living while you are intoxicated with life. Once sober, it is impossible not to see that it is all a mere trick, and a stupid trick." This is from an essay written by Tolstoy called A Confession. He's a literary giant, with works like War and Peace, Anna Karenina, and other world-class epic novels. Tolstoy, in his late 30s, was surprised to realize that he was a mortal being, and he was amazed that people didn't see this. So he seriously wanted to know the meaning of his life, and he scoured natural science, philosophy, religion and various works of literature to find it. The book A Confession is the record of his search for the meaning of life. And the conclusion of the book was that he couldn't find the meaning of life. Tolstoy wrote in A Confession that although he could not find the meaning of life, he had no courage to commit suicide either, so he had no choice but to live with it. This he called the way of weakness. Because Tolstoy, who was highly influential in Russia at the time, wrote that there was no meaning to life, young people became pessimistic and committed suicide one after another. So the Russian government banned the publication of this book. Tolstoy's shock really comes through vividly in this passage. How could I not understand this? How could a man live without seeing this? That was what Tolstoy wrote upon being astounded to see the problem of death for the first time. Tolstoy felt sure there was no meaning to life, but he didn't have the courage to die, so he chose to live. When he was 82, he suddenly left his home. In his later years, aware of his looming death, he must have still wanted to know if the truth was somewhere out there, so he couldn't stay at home any longer. Having gone out in the cold, he caught pneumonia and died as a result. Hyakuzo Kurata, who knew about Tolstoy's life, left the following words. He was a novelist best known for his best-selling book, The Priest and His Disciples. This book is about Master Shinran. I, too, was deeply moved when I read his book, The Priest and His Disciples. This book begins with the question, do you still not understand the problem of death? In the book, he mentions Tolstoy as follows. I think that a man like Tolstoy would have been the first person to be utterly ecstatic when he learned of the teachings of Honen and Shinran in Japan. Hyakuzo Kurata knew all too well the life of Tolstoy, who was shocked by the problem of death, wrestled earnestly with the fundamental question of why we live even though we will eventually die, and struggled to come up with an answer. Buddhism as taught by Master Honen and Master Shinran in Japan thoroughly addresses and solves the great problem of death, the matter of life and death, or the crucial matter of the afterlife. As Hyakuzo Kurata knew about the teachings of Master Shinran, he thought Tolstoy would have been eager to follow Master Shinran's teachings before anyone else if he knew about them. He wrote that he wanted people like Tolstoy to know about Master Shinran's teachings. He also commented on the book Taniso. In Taniso, Yuen, a disciple of Master Shinran, explains what Master Shinran said. Hyakuzo Kurata wrote the following about Taniso. Whether it's Nietzsche, Tolstoy, or Baudelaire, they would be amazed if they read this. If Tolstoy had not died after leaving his home at the age of 82 and had read this, he would have turned to the Buddha. So he said Nietzsche, Tolstoy, and Baudelaire would be amazed if they read Taniso. They were all deeply concerned with the problem of death. Philosophers like them would be surprised if they read this. A man like Tolstoy, if he had not died and had read Taniso, might have changed his mind and turned to the teachings of Master Shinran. What a pity he couldn't. This is what Kurata wrote about Tolstoy. So, what is written in Taniso? For example, in section 9 of Taniso, there is a vivid retelling of a conversation between Yuen and Master Shinran. In short, what Master Shinran says is, to fear death is the weakness of human beings, and we are full of blind passions and weak to no end. I can't help but rejoice in the grace and compassion of Amida Buddha, who fully perceived me as such a weak human being and firmly embraced me in salvation. Don't you feel the same, Yuen? Yuen replies, you are absolutely right. So in section 9 of Taniso, we see that Yuen and Master Shinran are filled with deep joy. Hyakuzo Kurata must have sensed the deep joy that was shared between Master Shinran and Yuen. The two of them were talking about the joy of having been blessed with happiness while frankly acknowledging their fear of death. Hyakuzo Kurata thought that this book might have the answer to the problem of death, and he wondered how Tolstoy would have felt if he had known about it.
どんな気持ちだっただろうかと、いうふうに感じたということでしょうね。
Buddhism is a teaching that deeply penetrates into the problem of death, and it teaches of the happiness that comes from having the critical issue of life and death resolved, as is the goal of Buddhism. Going back to the question from the beginning, I really appreciate that he felt that he was being made to see that it is important to look seriously at the issue of death in order to understand what is truly essential. I have been reminded once again that I have to convey the teachings of Buddhism in a way that brings people to understand it just like he did. Well, if you think you can learn something from this channel, I'd be delighted if you'd subscribe. Thank you very much for watching today.